Appreciate your coming today. Ian McCaw, who is, as you know, Baylor's very able athletics director, and I, along with members of the University Board of Regents, our wonderful alumni, and many, many friends, have been working quite hard to represent and to protect Baylor's interests relative to the future of the Big 12. Baylor emphatically supports the Big 12. And we're hopeful that the Big 12 will remain intact and will continue to be one of the nation's foremost athletic conferences. A strong athletic presence is not just good for Baylor, it's good for this community right here in Waco. It's also good for the great state of Texas. It's also good for the entire conference. So let me elaborate. Exposure through television and other media helps promote Baylor University in this conference. It strengthens our national reputation. For the state of Texas, a strong association and healthy rivalries between the University of Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Baylor University produces income. It produces jobs. It helps with student recruitment, not only here in Texas, but throughout the country. And of course, there's the great pride that we feel when Texas teams can dominate the national athletics landscape in so many of the sports. I'm very grateful for the leadership of the University of Texas, for President Bill Powers and his very strong commitment to keep the Big 12 together and to keep us moving towards a very bright future. Baylor treasures our relationship with the University of Texas and our fellow Texas institutions in the Big 12 Conference. I also want to say a word about my new home, Waco. That a strong athletic program here at Baylor brings positive recognition to the entire Central Texas region, Waco and beyond. And again, it creates and it supports employment opportunities. It infuses money into the economy, and we see that in a very common sense way. People coming in and staying at our hotels, eating at our restaurants. A study completed by Baylor economics professor Tom Kelly concluded that Baylor athletics had a very large impact. His estimate, $155.8 million a year during the 2008 calendar year on the Waco area. So let me close by saying that the situation is extremely fluid. We firmly believe that the Big 12 should stick together and that certainly the Lone Star State schools of the Big 12 should stick together. I'm guardedly optimistic about the future of the Big 12. But what we do know is that the Big 12 sticking together is in the best interest of Baylor University, the city of Waco, Central Texas, and indeed the entire state of Texas. And now I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have. I don't, because I have spent 2 very intense days in Kansas City with now 11 of my closest friends. There's nothing like this kind of issue to bring people together. And there's a great spirit in the conference rooms in Kansas City. I came to know most of the athletic directors and many of the faculty representatives, the women's representatives from throughout the Big 12. But the chancellors and the presidents got to know one another very, very well.
What can you tell us about the possibility of Baylor joining other Texas universities in a move to the Pac-10 and what that could mean for Baylor?
Well, we've seen a lot of speculation on that. We know the reports coming out of the Pac-10 and the Pac-10's expressed interest in expanding. But I think we also know that there has been a very clear set of statements coming out of the University of Texas, that the University of Texas intends to stay with the Big 12. And I think that as long as we in the great state of Texas have that solidarity, led by the University of Texas and with the other great institutions of Texas A&M and Texas Tech sticking together, then we will keep the state of Texas very, very much together.
We've heard a lot about different schools and scenarios and stuff like that.
Right.
And it's, you mentioned, very fluid. How does Baylor position itself, or what is going on behind the scenes, or what can you tell us is being done to make sure that Baylor's interests are represented should other schools make decisions not.
Well, I'm very proud of the reaction of our 100 and almost 50,000 Baylor alumni and then just countless friends around the country, and I mean around the country, who have been rallying around saying, this is right for the Big 12, it's right for the state of Texas, it's right for Baylor University. These are very, very venerable relationships that we have had. Even though the Big 12 is less than 20 years old, the relationships among the Texas universities that are in the Big 12 are decades old, of course, going back to the Southwest Conference. And so I think there's been an outpouring of very strong and fervent Baylor support that Baylor is in the conference and Baylor should remain as part of the Big 12 and certainly under any and all circumstances part of the Lone Star State members of the Big 12.
One of the Board of Regents used the word Armageddon to describe some of the scenarios and what it would mean for Baylor. Do you agree with it?
I'm not going to characterize it. We view the situation as a very important and serious one, and obviously I'm devoting an enormous amount of my own time and energy. I'm constantly with Ian McCaw, our great athletics director. We're keeping the Board of Regents informed, the senior administration informed, but very importantly, our alumni. Our alumni are really rallying around, and I'm so proud of them through blogs and the like, and they're making their views known. And the Baylor Nation is really standing up of one cheerful accord and saying, Baylor must remain in the Big 12, and let's keep the Big 12 together. The Big 12 is good for everybody.
Have you been advised of any timelines for any decisions?
Well, what we do know is that the University of Nebraska, is this the last question? The University of Nebraska is obviously a very important factor in the consideration. We know that their board will be meeting later on this week, and so the situation is fluid, so as I think most of the reports are suggesting. Stay tuned. Thank you very much.